She joked. The CEO would never notice me. He heard her and whispered, "Say that again for me." Before we explore all the details of this incredible story, tell us where you're following us from and the time. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing, and let's embark on this journey together. She never expected him to be listening. But then again, some conversations are meant to be overheard. Friday afternoon sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Morrison & Associates, casting golden patterns across the polished marble floors. The architectural firm buzzed with the satisfied energy of a week well spent. Phones had stopped their urgent ringing, keyboards clicked at a more leisurely pace, and conversations carried the light tone of approaching weekend freedom. Alina Scholes saved the last of her project files and leaned back in her ergonomic chair, allowing herself a moment to breathe. At 30, she commanded respect in every room she entered, but it hadn't come easy. Her rich, dark brown skin glowed under the natural light, and her natural hair was styled in a twist-out that framed her angular face perfectly. She wore a tailored emerald blazer over a crisp white blouse, professional armor that spoke of battles won in boardrooms, where she was often the only one who looked like her. As Director of Strategic Planning, she'd just guided the firm through their most successful quarter in 5 years. The numbers were impressive, the clients were happy, and for once she felt like she could exhale. Her computer chimed with a calendar notification. Monday 9 a.m., Riverside Plaza project kickoff with CEO Adrian Stokes. A flutter of nervousness mixed with excitement stirred in her stomach. The Riverside Plaza project was massive, a $200 million waterfront development that would reshape Brooklyn's skyline. And she'd be working directly with Adrian Stokes, the enigmatic CEO who'd built Morrison & Associates into one of the city's most influential firms. She'd seen him in meetings, of course, tall, commanding, with the kind of quiet authority that made rooms fall silent when he spoke. But they'd never worked together directly. He operated in the stratosphere of board meetings and investor calls, while she handled the day-to-day strategy that kept projects moving. "Alina!" Rebecca Torres, her closest friend at the firm and a senior project coordinator, appeared at her office door with 2 coffee cups and a grin. "Please tell me you're done for the day. I need caffeine and gossip in that order." "Done and done," Alina laughed, accepting the coffee gratefully. "What's the gossip?" "Coffee room. Now, you won't believe what happened in the Henderson Group meeting." They walked together toward the firm's break room, their heels clicking against the marble in synchronized rhythm. The coffee room was Morrison & Associates' unofficial social hub, a sleek space with granite countertops, professional-grade espresso machines, and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered stunning views of Manhattan's architectural landscape. James Wright, a young architect with an infectious laugh, was already holding court near the coffee machine, regaling a small group with animated gestures. And then the client asked if we could make the building more Instagrammable. "I'm not kidding." Those were his exact words. The group burst into laughter. Alina and Rebecca joined the circle, settling into the comfortable rhythm of Friday afternoon office banter. "Speaking of impossible client requests," Rebecca said, stirring sugar into her coffee, "did you hear about the Park Avenue project? The client wants gold-plated bathroom fixtures. Actual gold." "At least that's just expensive," Sarah Bolt, a structural engineer, chimed in. "I had a client ask if we could make a building earthquake-proof but also bouncy." More laughter rippled through the group. This was Alina's favorite part of the week, when the pressure lifted and her colleagues became friends, when the competitive edge of corporate life softened into genuine connection. "What about you, Alina?" James asked. "Any wild requests from the executive level?" "Nothing too crazy," she said, then smiled mischievously. "Though I did get assigned to work directly with Mr. Stokes on Riverside Plaza." "Oh my God!" Rebecca's eyes widened dramatically. "The Adrian Stokes project. Are you nervous?" "Should I be?" Alina laughed, taking a sip of her coffee. "Are you kidding?" Sarah leaned in conspiratorially. "Half the women in this building have fantasies about that man. He's like mysterious CEO incarnate, all that power and those grey eyes. Plus he's single," Rebecca added with a knowing look. "Word is he's completely focused on work, married to the job, as they say." James rolled his eyes good-naturedly. "You all realize he's probably a normal person, right? Maybe even boring." "Normal people don't build architectural empires," Sarah countered. "There's definitely something intriguing about him." Alina found herself smiling as she listened to her friends debate Adrian Stokes' appeal. The conversation was light, harmless, the kind of Friday afternoon speculation that happened in offices everywhere. "So, Alina," Rebecca grinned, clearly enjoying herself, Are you ready to work closely with Mr. Tall, Dark, and Mysterious? Please. Alina laughed, crossing her arms with natural confidence. Adrian Stokes would never notice someone like me. He lives in a completely different world. Board meetings, investor dinners, strategic partnerships. I'm just another employee with good spreadsheet skills. The words came out easily, tinged with humor and self-deprecating honesty. It wasn't bitter or sad, just the realistic assessment of a woman who understood corporate hierarchies and knew her place in them. You're selling yourself short, Rebecca protested. You're brilliant, beautiful, and you just guided us through our best quarter ever. Adrian Stokes never notari alguém como eu, Alina continued in the same light tone, switching to Portuguese with a playful grin. He's too busy running his empire to notice the worker bees. She was still smiling when a voice cut through the laughter, like a current of electricity. Repeat that for me. Every conversation in the coffee room stopped. The easy Friday afternoon atmosphere evaporated in an instant, replaced by something charged and unexpected. Alina turned, her heart suddenly beating faster, to find Adrian Stokes standing in the doorway. He was even more imposing up close, easily 6'2" with broad shoulders that filled out his perfectly tailored charcoal suit. His dark hair was touched with distinguished silver at the temples, and his grey eyes, those famous grey eyes Sarah had mentioned, were focused directly on her with an intensity that made her feel like the only person in the room. There was something magnetic about him, an understated power that didn't need to announce itself. He wasn't flashy or obvious, just quietly, devastatingly attractive in the way of a man completely comfortable in his own skin. Alina felt heat rise in her cheeks as she struggled to find words. It was just a joke, sir. Adrian stepped into the room, his presence somehow making the spacious coffee room feel smaller. His cologne, something expensive and subtle, reached her as he moved closer. Was it? He tilted his head slightly, those grey eyes never leaving her face. There was something in his expression she couldn't quite read. Amusement, maybe, or challenge. Because some jokes carry more truth than people realize. The coffee room had gone completely silent. Rebecca looked like she was trying not to smile, while James and Sarah seemed frozen in place, unsure whether they were witnessing a professional disaster or something else entirely. Alina straightened her shoulders, calling on every ounce of professional composure she'd developed over the years. Mr. Stokes, I didn't mean any disrespect. Adrian, he corrected softly. And no disrespect taken, I'm just curious about your perspective. The way he said her name, not harsh or cold, but with genuine interest, made something flutter in her chest that she immediately tried to suppress. My perspective? On whether someone like you would be noticed. His lips curved into the hint of a smile. For what it's worth, I've been noticing your work for months. The Henderson Group strategy, the Park Avenue timeline recovery, that was all you. Alina felt her breath catch. He'd been watching her work for months. Thank you, Sir Adrian. His name felt strange on her tongue, too personal somehow. He nodded once, then addressed the room. I hope everyone's enjoying their Friday. Don't let me interrupt. But as he turned to leave, he paused at the doorway and looked back at Alina. See you Monday morning, Ms. Scholes. 9 a.m. sharp. We have a lot to discuss. The coffee room remained silent for a full 10 seconds after he disappeared. Then Rebecca grabbed Alina's arm. Holy shit, she whispered. What just happened? I have no idea, Alina admitted, her heart still racing. He was watching you, Sarah breathed. Did you see the way he looked at you? James shook his head in amazement. And here I thought he was boring. Alina stared at the empty doorway, her mind racing. The playful confidence she'd felt moments ago had been replaced by something else entirely, a nervous anticipation that had nothing to do with Monday's meeting and everything to do with the way Adrian Stokes had said her name. Because sometimes the most dangerous conversations are the ones that start as jokes and end as something else entirely. Monday mornings were supposed to be predictable, but then again, nothing about Adrian Stokes was predictable. Alina arrived at Morrison & Associates 45 minutes early on Monday morning, her usual confidence slightly shaken by the weekend she'd spent replaying Friday's coffee room encounter. Every time she closed her eyes, she could see Adrian's grey eyes focused on her with that unreadable intensity, hear his voice saying her name like it mattered. She'd chosen her outfit carefully, a tailored black blazer over a deep purple blouse that brought out the warmth in her dark brown skin. Professional but not severe, confident but not trying too hard. At least she hoped that's how it looked. The 42nd floor was still quiet at 8:15 a.m., most employees not due until 9. Alina used the extra time to review the Riverside Plaza files one more time, though she could probably recite the project details in her sleep by now. Her computer chimed with an email notification. The sender made her heart skip. A. Stokes, morrisonassociates.com, Ms. Scholes, please meet me in conference room A at 8:45 to review materials before our 9 a.m. meeting. Coffee will be provided. Adrian, just his first name, not Mr. Stokes or A. Stokes, simply Adrian, as if Friday's encounter had shifted something between them, made formality unnecessary. At 8:43 a.m., Alina stood outside conference room A, taking a deep breath. Through the glass walls, she could see Adrian seated at the massive oak table, reviewing documents. He wore a navy suit that fit him perfectly, his dark hair slightly mussed as if he'd been running his fingers through it. She knocked gently on the glass door. "Come in," he called without looking up. The conference room smelled like fresh coffee and expensive cologne. His cologne, she realized as she stepped inside. It was even more intoxicating in the enclosed space. "Good morning," she said, settling her portfolio on the table across from him. Adrian looked up, and for a moment their eyes met across the polished wood. That same electric charge from Friday's coffee room filled the air between them. "Good morning, Alina." He gestured to the coffee service set up on the side table. "I wasn't sure how you take it. Black is fine, thank you." She moved toward the coffee, grateful for something to do with her hands. "Efficient," he observed, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "I should have guessed." When she turned back with her cup, he was watching her with that same focused attention that had left her breathless on Friday. This morning, though, she was determined to maintain her professional composure. "I've reviewed all the Riverside Plaza materials," she said, settling back into her chair. "The project timeline is aggressive but manageable, assuming we don't hit any major permitting delays." "Good." Adrian leaned back in his chair, studying her. "But before we dive into logistics, I want to address something." Alina's pulse quickened. "Sir?" "Adrian," he corrected gently. "And what I want to address is Friday." Heat rose in her cheeks. "Mr. Adrian, I want to apologize again for that comment. It was unprofessional and—" "It was honest," he interrupted, "and it made me realize that I've failed at something important." She blinked, confused. "I'm sorry?" Adrian stood and moved around the table, not crowding her but close enough that she could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes. "I've failed to make sure my employees know their value. Specifically that you know your value." The words hit her like a physical force. In 3 years at Morrison & Associates, she'd received plenty of positive feedback, good performance reviews, even a promotion. But no one, certainly not the CEO, had ever talked to her about her value. "I don't understand," she said softly. "Alina." Her name on his lips sounded different than it had on Friday, warmer, more personal. "Do you know what I was doing before I walked into that coffee room?" She shook her head. "I was reviewing the Henderson Group proposal." "Your proposal." He moved closer, his voice lowering. "It was brilliant, creative, thorough, and exactly what they needed to hear. I was actually heading to your office to tell you so when I heard voices in the coffee room." "Oh." It was all she could manage. "So when I heard you say that I'd never noticed someone like you—" He paused, those gray eyes searching her face. "It made me wonder what else I'd failed to communicate." The conference room suddenly felt smaller, the air between them charged with something she couldn't quite name. Professional admiration? Personal interest? Something more dangerous than either? "Adrian," she began, then stopped, unsure what she was going to say. "Tell me something," he said, settling back against the edge of the table, casual but still commanding. "What made you think I wouldn't notice you?" The question was so direct, so personal, that for a moment she forgot they were CEO and employee. "Honestly." "Always. Because men like you usually don't." The words came out before she could stop them. "Successful, powerful men tend to notice women who look like magazine covers, not women who look like me." Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Surprise maybe, or something that looked almost like anger. "Men like me," he repeated slowly. "I didn't mean—" "No, I want to understand. What exactly do you think I'm like?" Alina felt exposed, like she'd revealed more than she intended. But his gray eyes were still focused on her, waiting for an answer. "Rich, powerful, used to getting what you want." She paused, then added more quietly, "Used to women throwing themselves at you." Adrian was quiet for so long that she began to worry she'd crossed a line. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. "You're right about some of that. I am successful, and I do generally get what I want in business." He paused, those blue-gray eyes never leaving her face. "But you're wrong about what I notice." "I am? I notice intelligence. I notice competence. I notice women who can command a room without raising their voice, who can solve problems other people can't even see." His voice dropped lower. "I notice women who are beautiful without seeming to know it." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Alina felt her breath catch. "Adrian!" The conference room door opened, breaking the spell. David Kellerman, the firm's senior partner, entered with his usual brisk energy. "Morning, Adrian. Miss Scholes." David was in his 50s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, the kind of lawyer-turned-businessman who missed nothing. "Ready for the Henderson Group?" "Absolutely," Adrian replied smoothly, but not before Alina caught a flash of something that might have been frustration in his eyes. As the room filled with other team members, architects, project managers, financial analysts, Alina tried to focus on the meeting ahead, but her mind kept replaying Adrian's words. "I notice women who are beautiful without seeming to know it." "Alina?" David's voice cut through her thoughts. "Would you walk us through the timeline?" She stood, grateful for the familiar territory of project logistics. For the next hour, she presented schedules, budgets, and contingency plans with her usual precision. But she was intensely aware of Adrian's presence, the way he listened to her every word, the occasional nod of approval that sent warmth through her chest. The Henderson Group representatives, Elizabeth Carter and Thomas Wright, asked pointed questions about zoning, environmental impact, and community relations. Alina fielded each one with confidence, but it was Adrian who provided the big-picture vision that ultimately sold them on the project. "Exceptional work," Elizabeth said as the meeting concluded. "We're excited to move forward." As the room emptied, Alina gathered her materials, still processing the successful presentation and the charged conversation that had preceded it. "Alina," Adrian's voice stopped her at the door. She turned, expecting more discussion about the project. Instead, he stepped closer, close enough that she could see the slight stubble along his jaw, smell that intoxicating cologne. "Have dinner with me," he said quietly. "What?" The word came out breathless. "Dinner. Tonight. To celebrate the Henderson Group's success." Her heart raced. "Adrian, I don't think—" "As colleagues," he added quickly, though something in his eyes suggested it wouldn't feel like just colleagues. "You carried that presentation. You deserve to celebrate." Every instinct told her to say no. He was her boss. This was dangerous territory. But looking into those grey eyes, she found herself nodding. "Okay," Adrian smiled, a real smile that transformed his entire face. "Good. I'll have my assistant make reservations." 8 o'clock? 8 o'clock, she repeated. As she walked back to her office, Alina's mind raced. What had she just agreed to? Dinner with Adrian Stokes wasn't just dinner. It was stepping into unknown territory where professional lines blurred and her carefully controlled world might never be the same. Because some invitations change everything, even when they're disguised as simple dinner plans. Some conversations happen over dinner, others happen between the silences. Alina stood in front of her bedroom mirror at 6:30 p.m., second-guessing her outfit choice for the third time. The black dress was elegant, but not too formal, professional but with just enough femininity to remind herself, and Adrian, that this wasn't just another business meeting. Her phone buzzed with a text. "Car will be there at 7:45, looking forward to tonight. Adrian." The fact that he'd arranged a car sent a flutter through her stomach. This was definitely not just colleagues celebrating a successful presentation. Elena Vasquez, her neighbor and closest friend outside of work, poked her head through the bedroom doorway. "Girl, you look stunning, but you also look terrified." "I'm not terrified," Alina protested, then caught her reflection's nervous expression. "Okay, maybe a little terrified. It's dinner, not a merger negotiation." Elena perched on the edge of the bed, grinning. "Though knowing you, you've probably prepared talking points." "I have not prepared—" Alina stopped, realizing she absolutely had mentally rehearsed several safe conversation topics. "Okay, maybe I've thought about it. Alina Scholes, you are brilliant, beautiful, and successful. Any man would be lucky to have dinner with you, including your mysterious CEO." "He's not mysterious," Alina said, then reconsidered. "Well, maybe a little mysterious." The car that arrived at 7:45 was a sleek black sedan with a professional driver who held the door for her with practiced courtesy. As they glided through Manhattan traffic, Alina found herself wondering what kind of restaurant Adrian had chosen. Somewhere intimidatingly expensive, a trendy hotspot where they might be seen by other business contacts. 20 minutes later, The car pulled up in front of Le Bernardin, an elegant French restaurant known for its exquisite seafood and understated sophistication. Not flashy, but definitely impressive. The kind of place that suggested Adrian had put thought into the choice. Inside, the maitre d' greeted her by name and led her through the softly lit dining room to a corner table where Adrian was already waiting. He stood as she approached, and her breath caught slightly. He'd changed from his business suit into a charcoal blazer over a white shirt. No tie. The more casual look made him seem both more approachable and somehow more dangerous. His grey eyes met hers across the table, and that familiar electric charge filled the space between them. "You look beautiful," he said simply as the maitre d' held her chair. "Thank you." She settled into her seat, grateful for the moment to compose herself. "This is lovely. I hoped you'd like it. They have an excellent wine list, but I wasn't sure of your preferences." "I'm not much of a wine expert," she admitted. "I usually just go with whatever the sommelier recommends." Adrian smiled. "An approach I admire. Sometimes the best discoveries come from trusting someone else's expertise." The sommelier appeared as if summoned, and after a brief consultation, Adrian ordered a bottle of Barolo that the man assured them would pair perfectly with whatever they chose. "So," Adrian said once they were alone, "how are you feeling about the Henderson presentation today? Any post-meeting thoughts?" "Honestly," Alina relaxed slightly into familiar professional territory. "I think we nailed it. Elizabeth Carter asked exactly the questions I was hoping she'd ask, and your vision presentation was perfect." "My vision presentation was successful because it was built on your strategic foundation. You anticipated every concern they might have." The wine arrived, and Adrian went through the tasting ritual with casual expertise before nodding his approval. As the sommelier poured, Alina found herself studying Adrian's hands. Strong, with long fingers that handled the wine glass with unconscious grace. "Can I ask you something?" Adrian said once they were alone again. "Of course. What made you choose strategic planning? Most people find it—" He paused, searching for the right word. "Dry." Alina laughed. "Most people do find it dry, but I love the puzzle aspect. Taking all these variables, timelines, budgets, regulations, personalities, and finding a way to make them work together. It's like conducting an orchestra where half the musicians are playing different songs. And you enjoy bringing order to chaos. I enjoy creating something beautiful from complexity." She took a sip of wine, surprised by how smooth and rich it was. "What about you? What made you choose architecture? Or more specifically, what made you choose to run an architectural firm rather than design buildings?" Adrian was quiet for a moment, swirling the wine in his glass. "My father was an architect, traditional, old school, believed that good design spoke for itself. He built beautiful buildings that no one ever saw because he was terrible at business. What happened to him? He lost everything when I was in college. Brilliant designs, no clients. I watched him pour his heart into projects that never got built because he couldn't navigate the business side." Adrian's grey eyes met hers. "I decided I wanted to create a place where brilliant designers could focus on designing while someone else handled the business complexities. Like conducting an orchestra," Alina said softly. "Exactly like that." His smile was warm, genuine. "Though in my case, I'm trying to make sure the musicians have the instruments and sheet music they need to create something extraordinary." The waiter appeared to take their orders. Alina chose the branzino, while Adrian ordered the duck. As they settled back into conversation, she found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't expected. "Can I confess something?" Adrian said, leaning forward slightly. "That sounds dangerous. When I first heard about your strategic planning approach, I thought you might be too cautious for what we needed. Too safe. And now?" she asked, echoing their earlier conversation from the coffee room. "Now, I think safe is exactly what we needed. You create stability that allows other people to take creative risks. It's a rare skill. You make it sound more impressive than it is." "Do I?" Adrian tilted his head, studying her. "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think you're so used to having to prove yourself that you've forgotten to appreciate what you've already accomplished." The words hit closer to home than she'd expected. "What makes you say that?" "Friday, in the coffee room. The way you talked about yourself like you were invisible. But Alina," her name in his voice sent warmth through her chest. "You're the furthest thing from invisible." She felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Adrian, I'm serious. When you present to clients, the room changes. People lean forward, they listen differently. You command attention without demanding it. I think you're giving me too much credit." and I think you're not giving yourself enough." He paused as their entrees arrived, but his grey eyes never left her face. "Tell me about your family. You mentioned a brother who's an artist." The question shifted the mood, and Alina found herself smiling. "David. He's 2 years younger and completely opposite from me. Where I see structure and planning, he sees possibilities and chaos. He's incredibly talented, sculptures that make you feel things you didn't know you could feel. Sounds like he's as passionate about art as you are about strategic planning. More passionate, probably. Sometimes I worry about him. He's so focused on creating that he forgets about practical things like paying rent or eating regularly. The classic artistic temperament." "Exactly. But watching him work, it's like watching someone speak a language I'll never understand. He can take a piece of stone or metal and turn it into something that tells a story." Adrian smiled. "You know, you get the same expression when you talk about strategic planning. Maybe you're more alike than you think." "How so?" "You both take raw materials, his are physical, yours are abstract, and create something meaningful from them. You both see potential where others see problems." The observation was so unexpected, so insightful, that Alina found herself looking at Adrian with new appreciation. "I never thought about it that way. What about your parents? Are they as driven as their children?" Alina's expression softened. "My mother is a high school principal in Baltimore. My father teaches history at the community college. They're amazing people. They taught us that education was the path to anything we wanted, but they also taught us to stay grounded." "Sounds like they raised their children well." "They did, though I think they worry sometimes that I've become too focused on success and forgotten about other things." "Other things like?" She hesitated, then decided on honesty. "Like relationships, like letting people in, like trusting that I don't have to handle everything myself." The words hung in the air between them, more revealing than she'd intended. Adrian was quiet for a moment, his grey eyes studying her face. "And do you?" he asked softly. "Handle everything yourself?" "Usually." She took a sip of wine, using the moment to gather her courage. "It's easier that way, safer. But lonely." The word hit like a gentle blow. "Sometimes." Adrian reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers where they rested beside her wineglass. The touch was light, brief, but it sent electricity up her arm. "You know what I think," he said quietly. "What?" "I think you've been taking care of everyone else for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to let someone take care of you." The insight was so accurate it took her breath away. "Adrian, I'm not trying to overstep," he said quickly. I see how you carry the weight of every project, every decision, and I wonder who carries the weight for you." For a moment, Alina couldn't speak. No one had ever asked her that question, not her parents, not her friends, not any of the men she'd dated. The fact that Adrian had seen it, had thought to ask, made something flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with professional admiration. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Maybe," Adrian said, his thumb brushing across her knuckles before he pulled his hand back. "It's time to find out." The rest of dinner passed in a blur of easy conversation, shared laughter, and moments of charged silence. Adrian told her about his travels, his collection of vintage architectural books, his secret addiction to cooking shows. She found herself sharing stories about college, her first job disasters, her dream of someday designing sustainable housing projects. As they waited for the check, Adrian looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Can I ask you something else?" he said. "You've been asking me things all evening," she laughed. "What's one more? What are you doing Saturday?" Her heart skipped. "Saturday? There's an art exhibition opening at the Whitney, contemporary sculpture. I thought—" He paused, as if choosing his words carefully. "I thought you might enjoy seeing what your brother's contemporaries are creating." "Adrian, are you asking me on another date?" His smile was slow, devastating. "Would that be terrible?" "It would be—" She searched for the right word. "Complicated. The best things usually are." Looking into his grey eyes, seeing the genuine interest there, Alina made a decision that felt both terrifying and inevitable. "I'd love to see the exhibition." Adrian's smile could have powered half of Manhattan. "Good. I'll pick you up at 2. As they waited for the car outside the restaurant, Adrian turned to her. "Thank you for tonight. I haven't enjoyed myself this much in longer than I care to admit. Thank you for dinner. And for—" she gestured helplessly, "for seeing me." "Alina," he said quietly, stepping closer, "you're impossible to miss." The car arrived before either of them could say anything else, but as Adrian helped her into the back seat, His hand lingered on hers for just a moment longer than necessary, because sometimes the most dangerous conversations are the ones that make you forget why you were afraid in the first place. Art has a way of revealing truths that words can't touch. Saturday afternoon sunlight streamed through Alina's apartment windows as she tried on her third outfit. Casual but put together, she'd decided. Dark jeans, a cream silk blouse, and a tailored navy blazer. Museum appropriate but still feminine enough to remind herself this was definitely a date. Her phone buzzed with a text at exactly 2 p.m. Downstairs whenever you're ready. No rush. Adrian. The fact that he was punctual but not pushy sent a warm flutter through her chest. She grabbed her purse and headed downstairs, where she found Adrian leaning against a sleek grey BMW, hands in the pockets of his dark jeans. He wore a charcoal sweater that hugged his broad shoulders perfectly, and when he looked up and smiled, her heart did a little skip. "You look beautiful," he said, straightening to open the passenger door for her. "Thank you." She slid into the car, breathing in the subtle scent of leather and his cologne. "Nice car. It gets me where I need to go," he said with a slight smile, settling into the driver's seat. "Though I have to admit, I don't get to drive it much. Usually it's all town cars and business meetings." "What made you decide to drive today?" Adrian glanced at her as he pulled into traffic. "Honestly, I wanted the extra time with you. Seemed like a waste to spend it in separate cars." The simple honesty of the statement made her stomach flutter. As they drove through Manhattan toward the Whitney, they fell into easy conversation about everything and nothing. Her favorite museums, his collection of vintage architecture books, the best coffee shops in their respective neighborhoods. "Can I ask you something?" Alina said as they found parking near the meatpacking district. "Always. Last night when you talked about your father, do you still design? Or did you give that up entirely for the business side?" Adrian was quiet for a moment as he turned off the engine. "I sketch sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, but it's been years since I've done anything serious." "Do you miss it?" "Sometimes." He turned to look at her, his grey eyes thoughtful. "But watching talented architects create something extraordinary, because they have the support and resources they need, that's its own kind of design. I'm building something too, just on a different scale." Inside the Whitney, the contemporary sculpture exhibition was stunning. Massive installations that played with light and shadow, intimate pieces that demanded closer inspection, abstract works that challenged perception. They moved through the galleries at an unhurried pace, stopping to discuss pieces that caught their attention. "This one reminds me of your brother's work," Adrian said, pausing in front of a bronze sculpture that seemed to capture motion in metal. "How so?" Alina studied the piece, trying to see what he saw. "The way it suggests movement, even though it's completely still, there's something alive about it." She looked at him with surprise. "You've seen David's work." Adrian's expression shifted slightly, as if he'd said more than he intended. "I may have done some research after you mentioned him. His gallery has photos of his pieces online. He's incredibly talented." "You researched my brother?" The words came out more breathlessly than she intended. "Is that strange?" "It's—" She searched for the right word. "Thoughtful and a little overwhelming." "Overwhelming in a good way or a bad way?" "Good way," she said softly. "Definitely good way." They moved deeper into the exhibition, their conversation flowing naturally from art to architecture, to the creative process itself. Adrian asked insightful questions about her perspective on each piece, and she found herself seeing the works through new eyes as she tried to articulate her responses. "What about this one?" Adrian asked, stopping in front of an abstract piece that looked like controlled chaos. Metal and glass twisted together in a way that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. Alina studied it for a long moment. "It's like strategic planning, actually." "How so?" "All these elements that seem random and conflicting, but when you step back, you can see the underlying structure. The chaos is intentional, controlled. Someone planned this mess." Adrian smiled. "I love the way your mind works." "Is that your way of saying I overthink everything?" "It's my way of saying you see patterns where other people see confusion. It's a gift." They found themselves in a quieter gallery, standing in front of a series of smaller, more intimate pieces. The space was less crowded, the lighting softer, and somehow the atmosphere felt more personal. "Can I tell you something?" Adrian said, his voice lower in the quieter space. "Of course. I was nervous about today." Alina turned to look at him, surprised. "You were nervous? You're Adrian Stokes. You run board meetings and close million-dollar deals. Board meetings are easy. This," he gestured between them, "this matters more." The simple admission made her heart race. "Adrian, I know this is complicated, he said quickly. The work situation, the fact that we barely know each other outside of conference rooms. But Alina, I can't stop thinking about Wednesday night. About the way you laugh when you're not trying to be professional. About the way you see solutions where other people see problems. She felt her breath catch. I can't stop thinking about it either. Good, he said, stepping closer, because I have a confession. Another one. I've been finding excuses to walk past your office, scheduling meetings in conference rooms where I can see your desk. It's becoming embarrassing. Alina laughed, the sound echoing softly in the gallery. That's terrible. I know. My assistant probably thinks I've lost my mind. Have you? Adrian's grey eyes held hers. Maybe a little. They stood there in the quiet gallery, surrounded by art that challenged conventional thinking, and Alina felt something shift between them. The careful professional distance they'd maintained was dissolving, replaced by something warmer and more honest. Adrian, she said softly. Yes? What happens on Monday, when we go back to being CEO and Director of Strategic Planning? I don't know, he admitted. But I know I don't want to pretend Wednesday night didn't happen, or that today isn't happening. People will talk. Let them. His voice was firm. Alina, I've spent 5 years building this company, and in all that time I've never met anyone who challenges me the way you do, who makes me want to be better at everything, not just business. You challenge me too, she said quietly. You make me want to take risks I've never been brave enough to take. Like what? Like this. Like standing in a museum with my boss and admitting that I haven't been able to focus on anything except wondering what it would be like if you kissed me. The words hung in the air between them, bold and honest and terrifying. Adrian's expression shifted, his grey eyes darkening. Alina, I know it's complicated. It's not the complications I'm worried about. He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of blue in his eyes, smell his cologne mixing with the clean scent of the museum. It's the fact that once I kiss you, everything changes, and I want to make sure you're ready for that. What if I'm not sure I'll ever be ready? But I want to do it anyway. Adrian's smile was slow, devastating. Then I'd say that sounds exactly like the kind of calculated risk a strategic planner would take. Is that what this is? A calculated risk? No, he said softly, his hand coming up to cup her face gently. This is me taking the biggest leap of faith I've ever taken. And then he kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, as if he was giving her time to change her mind. But when she responded, her hands coming up to rest against his chest, the kiss deepened into something that spoke of weeks of building tension and careful restraint, finally breaking down. When they finally broke apart, both breathing slightly unsteadily, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. Well, he said quietly, that definitely changes everything. Good or bad change? The best kind. He pulled back to look at her, his grey eyes warm with something that looked like wonder. The absolutely terrifying, completely worth it kind. Around them, the museum continued its quiet Saturday afternoon rhythm, visitors moving through galleries, art speaking its silent language of beauty and meaning. But in their small corner of the contemporary wing, Alina and Adrian had created their own private world, where Monday morning meetings and corporate hierarchies felt very far away. So, Alina said, trying to steady her racing heart, what do we do now? Now, Adrian said, his thumb brushing across her cheek before he dropped his hand, we finish looking at art. And then we figure out how to navigate this brave new world we just created. Together, definitely together. His smile was warm, certain. Though I should probably warn you, I'm completely out of my depth here. I've never dated an employee before, and I've never dated a CEO. She smiled back. I guess we'll figure it out as we go. The strategic planning approach. Exactly. One careful step at a time. Because sometimes the most important decisions aren't planned at all. They're felt in quiet museum galleries, between heartbeats and held breath. Monday mornings after everything changes are a special kind of terrifying. Alina stood in front of her bathroom mirror at 6:15 a.m., applying mascara with hands that were definitely not as steady as usual. She'd barely slept, her mind replaying Saturday afternoon at the Whitney on an endless loop. Adrian's confession, the way he'd looked at her before he kissed her, the warmth of his hand against her face. Once I kiss you, everything changes. He'd been right. Everything had changed. The question now was how to navigate a Monday morning at Morrison & Associates, where she was still Director of Strategic Planning and he was still the CEO. But they were also, what exactly? Dating? Involved? Figuring it out as they went? She chose a navy suit with a subtle pinstripe, professional armor for what was likely to be a complicated day. As she gathered her portfolio and headed out, her phone buzzed with a text that made her heart skip. "Good morning. Coffee in my office at 8:30. We should probably talk before the day gets away from us." Adrian, formal but warm, professional but personal, exactly the kind of careful balance they were going to have to master. The Morrison and Associates lobby felt different as she walked through it, not because anything had actually changed, but because she was seeing it through new eyes. Eyes that belonged to a woman who'd kissed the CEO in a museum gallery and was still figuring out what that meant. "Morning, Alina." Rebecca Torres fell into step beside her as they headed toward the elevators. "How was your weekend? You look glowy." "Glowy? Like you had a really good weekend. Spill." Before Alina could respond, the elevator doors opened to reveal James Wright and Sarah Bolt from Friday's coffee room encounter, the same people who'd witnessed Adrian asking her to repeat her comment about him, never noticing someone like her. "Morning, ladies," James said cheerfully. "Ready for another exciting week in the architectural empire?" "Always," Alina replied, hyper-aware of how normal she needed to sound. "Speaking of the empire," Sarah said with a grin, "did you see the email about the Riverside Plaza celebration party? Apparently Mr. Stokes is throwing a whole event to celebrate landing the Henderson Group contract." Alina's stomach fluttered. She hadn't seen any email, but then again she'd been too distracted this morning to check her messages properly. "When?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Friday night. Rooftop terrace, open bar, the whole 9 yards. Word is he's actually going to make a speech thanking the team personally." The elevator reached their floor, and as they stepped out, Rebecca linked arms with Alina. "You know what this means, right?" "What?" "You get to be publicly recognized for your brilliant strategic work, in front of the entire company, by the CEO himself." If only Rebecca knew how complicated that recognition had become. At 8:25 a.m., Alina stood outside Adrian's executive office, taking a deep breath. Through the glass walls, she could see him at his desk, reviewing documents. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly, and when he looked up and saw her, his entire expression softened into something that was definitely not professional. "Come in," he called, standing as she entered. "Good morning," she said, settling into the chair across from his desk. The same professional distance they'd always maintained, even though everything inside her wanted to be closer. "Good morning." His grey eyes held hers for a moment longer than appropriate for a business meeting. "How are you feeling about everything?" Honestly, terrified and excited in equal measure. Adrian's smile was warm, understanding. "That sounds about right. I've been up since 5 thinking about how to handle this." "And what did you decide?" "That we need ground rules, for both our sakes." He leaned back in his chair, shifting into the more serious tone she recognized from board meetings. "First, during business hours, we maintain complete professionalism. No special treatment, no personal conversations in front of other employees, no indication that anything has changed between us." "Agreed." "Second, we keep this between us until we figure out what this actually is. The last thing either of us needs is office gossip, complicating an already complicated situation." "Also agreed." She paused, then added, "Though I have to ask, what about the Riverside Plaza party on Friday? Sarah mentioned it in the elevator." Adrian's expression shifted slightly. "About that. I'll be giving a speech thanking the entire team, and yes, I'll be specifically recognizing your strategic work, but it won't be any different from how I'd recognize any exceptional employee." "Of course. However," he continued, his voice dropping slightly, "I was hoping you might stay after the official party ends. There are some private matters I'd like to discuss." The way he said, "private matters," sent warmth through her chest. "What kind of private matters?" "The kind that involve figuring out when I can take you to dinner again without half the company speculating about it." Before she could respond, a knock on the glass door interrupted them. David Kellerman, the senior partner, stood outside with a stack of documents and his usual impatient expression. "Come in, David," Adrian called, immediately shifting into CEO mode. "Morning, Adrian, Ms. Scholes." David settled into the chair next to Alina's, spreading papers across Adrian's desk. "I need to brief you both on the Riverside Plaza environmental review. We have some complications." For the next hour, they worked through zoning issues, permit delays, and community relations challenges with the same professional efficiency they'd always had. But Alina was intensely aware of Adrian's presence, the way he listened to her recommendations, the occasional moment when their eyes met across the conference table, the careful way he avoided any gesture that might seem too personal. "Excellent work, as always," David said, as the meeting concluded. "Ms. Scholes, your contingency planning may have just saved us 6 weeks and a significant budget overrun." "Thank you," she replied, gathering her materials. As David left, Adrian caught her attention. "Same time tomorrow? There are a few more issues we'll need to address." "Of course." Professional, appropriate, giving no indication that they'd kissed in a museum gallery less than 48 hours ago. But as she reached the door, Adrian's voice stopped her. "Alina?" She turned back. "Good work today. Really exceptional strategic thinking." The praise was professional, appropriate for any CEO recognizing good work. But something in his gray eyes made it feel personal, warm, like a private message disguised as public recognition. "Thank you, Adrian." The rest of the day passed in a blur of normal Monday activities, team meetings, project reviews, client calls. But underneath the familiar routine, Alina was hyper-aware of every interaction. When she passed Adrian in the hallway, they nodded politely. When they attended the same budget meeting, they maintained appropriate professional distance. When Rebecca asked about her weekend plans, she deflected with practiced ease. At 5:30 p.m., as the office began to empty, her phone buzzed with a text. "Dinner tonight? Somewhere quiet where we can actually talk about this. Adrian." She stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Yes. But somewhere no one from the office will see us. I know just the place. Pick you up at 7, perfect." As she packed up her desk, Alina caught her reflection in her computer screen. The woman looking back at her was composed, professional, successful, the same woman who'd walked into Morrison & Associates 3.5 years ago. But there was something different now, something that had nothing to do with strategic planning or project timelines. For the first time in her carefully controlled career, she was taking a risk that couldn't be managed with spreadsheets or contingency plans. She was falling for a man who could complicate everything she'd worked for, or make it all make sense in ways she'd never imagined. Because sometimes the most dangerous risks are the ones that feel like coming home. Some conversations can only happen away from the world that knows you. The restaurant Adrian chose was tucked away in a quiet corner of the Upper East Side, the kind of intimate neighborhood bistro that didn't attract the corporate crowd from Midtown. Le Bernardin's smaller, more discreet cousin, with soft lighting, closely spaced tables, and the blessed anonymity that came with being off the beaten path. Alina arrived first, having taken a taxi to avoid any chance of being seen leaving with Adrian. She'd changed from her work suit into a soft grey sweater and dark jeans, still put together, but more herself somehow. Less armor, more honesty. "Table for Stokes," she told the hostess, testing how it felt to say his name in this context. She was seated at a corner table reviewing the wine list when Adrian appeared. He'd also changed. Dark jeans, a navy sweater that made his grey eyes look almost blue. Without the suit, he looked less like the intimidating CEO and more like the man who'd kissed her in a museum gallery. "Sorry I'm late," he said, settling into the chair across from her. "I waited 15 minutes after you left to avoid the elevator gossip network." Smart thinking. Though I have to ask, do you always choose restaurants this far from the office for business dinners? Adrian's smile was slightly sheepish. "I may have called in a favor. The owner is an old college friend. Very discreet. Excellent food and absolutely no chance of running into anyone from Morrison & Associates. You've put a lot of thought into this." "I've put a lot of thought into you," he said simply, then seemed to realize how that sounded. "I mean, into this situation, into how to handle us." The waiter appeared, saving them from the momentary awkwardness. After ordering wine and reviewing the menu, they settled into the kind of comfortable silence that had become familiar between them. "So," Alina said, breaking the quiet, "how did today feel? The whole maintaining professional distance thing?" "Harder than I expected," Adrian admitted. "When David was praising your contingency planning, all I wanted to do was add that you're also brilliant, funny, and the most interesting person I've met in years. But that seemed like it might be inappropriate for a budget meeting." "Slightly inappropriate, yes," she smiled. "Though I have to admit, when you said 'good work today' at the end, it felt like you were saying something entirely different." "Because I was." His grey eyes held hers. "I was saying, I can't stop thinking about Saturday. And you look beautiful even when you're explaining environmental impact assessments. And this is the longest I've ever gone wanting to kiss someone again." The words sent warmth flooding through her chest. "That's a lot to communicate in 4 words. I'm efficient." Their wine arrived, a Sancerre that Adrian had chosen, and as the waiter poured, Alina found herself studying his hands again, strong, graceful, with long fingers that she remembered against her face. "Can I ask you something?" she said once they were alone. "Always. What are we doing here? I mean really, not just dinner, but—" She gestured between them. "This, whatever this is." Adrian was quiet for a moment, swirling the wine in his glass. "Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. 3 weeks ago, if someone had told me I'd be having dinner with my director of strategic planning and thinking about how to define our relationship, I'd have suggested they see a therapist. And now? Now I'm the one who probably needs the therapist." He looked up at her, his expression serious. "But I know I don't want to stop. Whatever complications this creates, whatever challenges we'll face, I don't want to go back to pretending you're just another employee." "Good," she said softly. "Because I don't want to go back to pretending you're just my boss." "So what does that make us?" Alina considered the question. "Two people who are attracted to each other, enjoy each other's company, and are mature enough to handle the professional complications? That sounds very strategic." "I am a strategic planner." "You are." Adrian leaned forward slightly. "But what do you want this to be? Not the strategic analysis. What does Alina want?" The question caught her off guard with its directness. "Honestly?" "Always honestly. I want to see where this goes. I want to have dinner with you and talk about things that have nothing to do with project timelines. I want to kiss you again, without worrying about who might see. I want—" She paused, gathering courage. "I want to fall for someone without having to analyze the risks first." "And are you falling?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility and danger. Alina looked into his grey eyes and made another decision that couldn't be managed with spreadsheets. "Yes," she said quietly. "Are you?" "I fell Friday night at dinner," Adrian said without hesitation. "When you talked about your brother and your parents, and you got that expression you get when you care about something. When you let me see past the professional composure to who you really are." The admission made her breath catch. "Adrian, I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. But Alina, I haven't felt this way about anyone in—" He shook his head. "Maybe ever." "What way?" "Like you see me. Not Adrian Stokes, CEO, but just me. The guy who sketches buildings at 2 a.m. and collects vintage architecture books and has no idea what he's doing when it comes to dating someone he works with." Their entrees arrived. She'd ordered the salmon, he'd chosen the duck, but neither of them seemed particularly focused on food. "Can I tell you something that might sound crazy?" Alina said. "After what I just admitted?" "Yes, please." "I've been thinking about that night in the coffee room, when you asked me to repeat what I'd said about you never noticing someone like me. What about it? I think part of me wanted you to overhear. Not consciously, but—" She struggled to find the right words. "I think I'd been hoping you'd notice me for months and I was tired of waiting." Adrian's expression shifted into something that looked like wonder. "You wanted me to notice you? How could I not? You walk into a room and everything changes. You ask questions that make people think differently. You built something extraordinary from nothing." She paused, then added more quietly, "And you're ridiculously attractive." "Which doesn't hurt." "Ridiculously attractive. Don't let it go to your head." Adrian's laugh was warm, genuine. "Too late. My ego may never recover from that assessment." They talked through dinner about everything: his college years, her graduate school experiences, favorite books, worst job interviews, childhood embarrassments. The conversation flowed with the same ease they'd found at their first dinner, but with an undercurrent of intimacy that came from acknowledged feelings. "What about exes?" Alina asked as they shared a dessert neither of them had really wanted. "Any CEO ex-girlfriends I should know about?" "No CEO ex-girlfriends," Adrian said with a smile. "Though I should probably mention that my last serious relationship ended because she said I was married to the company." "Were you?" "Probably. It was easier than dealing with the fact that I hadn't met anyone who made me want to be married to anything else." "And now?" Adrian's grey eyes held hers. "Now I'm thinking about what it would be like to be married to the idea of you." The words sent heat through her entire body. "That's a very romantic way of saying you're a workaholic who's found someone worth changing for. Is that what I'm saying? Isn't it?" "Maybe. Is that what you want to hear?" Alina considered the question. "I want to hear that you're willing to figure this out with me, even if it means changing some things about how we both approach relationships." "I'm willing." His voice was firm, certain. "Are you?" "Yes." The word came without hesitation. "Though I should probably warn you, I'm not great at the whole vulnerable and open thing. I tend to overthink everything." "I've noticed." It's one of the things I find most attractive about you. My overthinking? Your mind. The way you analyze situations from every angle. The way you plan for contingencies most people don't even consider." He paused, then added more softly, "I want to be one of your contingencies, Alina. I want to be part of your plans." The simple statement hit her with unexpected force. In 3 years of dating, no one had ever wanted to be part of her plans. Most men found her strategic thinking intimidating or controlling. "That might be the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me," she said quietly. "Then you've been dating the wrong people." As they waited for the check, Adrian reached across the table and took her hand, the first intentionally intimate gesture they'd shared since Saturday. "So," he said, his thumb tracing across her knuckles, "where do we go from here?" "Carefully," she said, "one step at a time, professional during work hours, honest with each other about everything else." "And Friday night, the Riverside Plaza party." Alina smiled. "Friday night, you give a brilliant speech recognizing the team's work. I smile politely and professionally when you mention my contributions, and then we see how good we are at keeping secrets when there's champagne involved." Adrian's smile was devastating. "I like this plan, because sometimes the best strategies are built on hope rather than certainty. Some secrets are harder to keep when everyone is watching." The Morrison and Associates rooftop terrace had been transformed into something magical. String lights crisscrossed overhead like stars, casting a warm glow over elegant cocktail tables scattered throughout the space. Manhattan's skyline provided a breathtaking backdrop, and the open bar was already drawing a steady crowd of architects, project managers, and support staff ready to celebrate the Riverside Plaza victory. Alina arrived fashionably on time, wearing a navy blue cocktail dress that struck the perfect balance between professional and stunning. She'd spent 20 minutes deciding between this dress and a safer black option, finally choosing the navy, because Adrian had once mentioned it was his favorite color. Not that anyone else would make that connection. "Alina!" Rebecca Torres appeared at her elbow almost immediately, champagne flute in hand and eyes bright with party excitement. "You look incredible. That dress is perfect on you." "Thank you." Alina accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, grateful for something to occupy her hands. "This is quite a setup, right? Mr. Stokes really went all out. Open bar, catered hors d'oeuvres, and apparently he's giving a speech later to personally thank the team." Rebecca lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Word is he's specifically calling out the strategic planning work, your strategic planning work." Before Alina could respond, a familiar voice carried across the terrace. She turned to see Adrian near the bar, surrounded by senior partners and clients, but even from a distance his presence was magnetic. He wore a perfectly tailored dark grey suit with a navy tie that complemented her dress so perfectly it couldn't be coincidental. Their eyes met across the crowd just for a moment, and she saw something flash in his grey eyes that had nothing to do with professional recognition. "Earth to Alina!" Rebecca laughed. "You're staring." "What? No, I was just—" Alina forced herself to look away. "Just thinking about the project timeline." "Uh-huh. You were thinking about timelines while staring at our very attractive CEO." "I was not staring. Honey, half the women here are staring. The man looks like he walked out of a magazine, but you were staring like—" Rebecca paused, studying her friend's face. "Like, you know something the rest of us don't." Alina's heart skipped. "I don't know what you mean." "I mean you've been different this week. Glowy, distracted. And now you're looking at Adrian Stokes like—" "Like what?" James Wright appeared with Sarah Bolt, both carrying cocktails and wearing curious expressions. "Like she has inside information about our mysterious CEO," Rebecca said with a grin. "Do you?" Sarah asked hopefully. "Because the speculation about his dating life has reached epic proportions. Someone started a rumor that he's secretly married to his work and will never date anyone." "Someone else said he only dates supermodels," James added. "Though personally I think he seems like the type who'd go for someone smart, someone who could keep up with him intellectually." Alina nearly choked on her champagne. "I really wouldn't know." "But you work with him more closely than anyone," Sarah pressed. "Surely you have some insight into what he's like when he's not being all CEO-ish." "He's—" Alina searched for words that were truthful but not revealing. "He's very professional, focused, intelligent." "That's it?" Rebecca looked disappointed. "No juicy personality insights?" "Sorry to disappoint." Alina managed a smile. "He's exactly what you'd expect from a successful CEO. What she didn't say, that he also sketched buildings at 2 a.m., collected vintage architecture books, had strong opinions about coffee brewing methods, and kissed with a gentleness that took her breath away. "Ladies and gentlemen," Adrian's voice cut through the party chatter as he stepped up to a small platform near the center of the terrace. "If I could have your attention for a few minutes." The crowd quieted, turning toward him with the automatic respect that came with his position. In the soft lighting, he looked every inch the successful executive, confident, authoritative, completely in command. "First, I want to thank all of you for being here tonight," he began, his voice carrying easily across the space. "The Riverside Plaza project represents everything this firm does best: innovative design, strategic thinking, and flawless execution." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. Alina found herself watching his face, remembering how different he looked when they were alone, when his guard was down and his smile was just for her. "This project succeeded because of teamwork," Adrian continued. "Our architectural team created something truly visionary. Our project managers kept us on track and on budget. Our environmental consultants navigated complex regulations with expertise and creativity." More applause. Alina's pulse began to quicken as she realized he was building towards something. "But I want to specifically recognize our strategic planning work on this project," Adrian said, his gray eyes finding hers across the crowd. "The Henderson Group chose Morrison & Associates not just because of our design capabilities, but because of our strategic approach to complex developments." The crowd murmured approvingly. Rebecca grabbed Alina's arm, squeezing with excitement. "The strategic planning for Riverside Plaza was exceptional," Adrian continued, his gaze still holding hers. "Thorough, innovative, and exactly what our clients needed to feel confident in their investment. It's the kind of work that sets this firm apart and makes everything else possible." More applause, louder now. Someone near Alina called out, "Speech," but she was too focused on Adrian's face to notice who. "Our Director of Strategic Planning, Alina Scholes, exemplifies everything this company values," Adrian said, and Alina felt heat rise in her cheeks as every face in the crowd turned toward her. "Intelligence, dedication, and the ability to see solutions where others see obstacles. The success of Riverside Plaza is as much hers as anyone's." The applause was enthusiastic now, with several people near her offering congratulations. But all Alina could focus on was the way Adrian was looking at her, professional recognition mixed with something warmer, more personal. "So please," Adrian concluded, raising his champagne glass, "join me in celebrating not just this project, but the exceptional team that made it possible." "To the team!" the crowd responded, glasses raised. As the formal part of the evening concluded and conversations resumed, Alina found herself surrounded by colleagues offering congratulations. The praise was genuine and well-deserved, but she was hyper-aware of Adrian's presence across the terrace, the way he was working the room while occasionally glancing in her direction. "That was quite a recognition." David Kellerman appeared at her elbow, champagne glass in hand. "Well-deserved, of course. Your strategic work on this project was exceptional." "Thank you, David. I had an excellent team to work with." Still, Adrian doesn't give public praise lightly. You should be proud. What David didn't know was that the praise felt different, coming from someone who'd told her 3 days ago that he was falling for her. Professional recognition, mixed with personal admiration, was a heady combination. The party continued around them, conversations flowing, champagne being refilled, the New York skyline providing a glittering backdrop. Alina moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations and engaging in small talk, but she was constantly aware of Adrian's location, the sound of his laugh, the way he commanded attention without demanding it. Around 9:30, as the party began to wind down and people started making their exit excuses, Alina found herself near the edge of the terrace, looking out at the city lights. The evening air was cool but not uncomfortable, and she was grateful for a moment of quiet after the social intensity. "Quite a view," Adrian's voice said beside her. She turned, startled by his proximity. He'd approached quietly, and now stood just close enough that she could smell his cologne, see the slight tiredness around his eyes that suggested the week had been as challenging for him as it had been for her. "It is," she agreed, hyper-aware that anyone could see them, but that their conversation would look perfectly innocent to outside observers. "Thank you for the recognition tonight. That was more than I expected. It was exactly what you deserved." His voice was low, meant only for her, though I have to admit it was difficult to keep my remarks purely professional. "Oh, what would you have said instead?" Adrian glanced around, confirming they were relatively isolated, before stepping slightly closer. "I would have said that you're the most brilliant strategic mind I've ever worked with, that you make me want to be better at everything, not just business, that you look stunning in that dress and I've been thinking about kissing you all evening." The words sent warmth flooding through her. "Adrian, I know. Wrong place, wrong time." He stepped back to a more appropriate distance. "But I wanted you to know. The party's winding down," she observed, trying to keep her voice steady. "It is. Most people will probably leave in the next 15 minutes. And then?" "And then," he said quietly, "I was hoping you might stay. Help me review some strategic planning documents. In my office, away from the crowds." The invitation was professionally phrased but personally loaded. "What kind of strategic planning documents?" "The kind that involve figuring out what we're doing about this attraction that's becoming impossible to ignore in professional settings." Before she could respond, Rebecca appeared with Sarah and James, all slightly flushed with champagne and party excitement. "There you are," Rebecca exclaimed. "We were just talking about how amazing it must feel to get that kind of public recognition." Mr. Stokes was really laying on the praise. "It was very generous," Alina agreed, stepping slightly away from Adrian. "Well-deserved praise," Adrian said smoothly, back in CEO mode. "Ms. Scholz's work on this project was exceptional by any standard." "See?" Sarah said to the group. "I told you he'd be the type to appreciate intelligence over everything else." If only they knew how right they were. As her friends continued chatting, Alina caught Adrian's eye. The question was there, unspoken but clear. "Stay." Her answer was in her slight nod, barely perceptible but enough, because sometimes the most important conversations happen after the party ends. The most honest conversations happen when the world stops watching. The Morrison & Associates building felt different at 10:30 p.m. The usual bustle of phones and keyboards had been replaced by the quiet hum of late-night security lighting and the distant sounds of Manhattan traffic 45 floors below. Alina rode the elevator to the executive floor with a champagne-induced warmth in her chest and the delicious anticipation of finally being alone with Adrian. The elevator doors opened to reveal Adrian waiting in the reception area, his suit jacket discarded and his tie loosened. He'd rolled up his sleeves, and the more casual look made him seem both more approachable and somehow more dangerous. "I was beginning to think you'd changed your mind," he said, his grey eyes warm with something that had nothing to do with professional courtesy. "Rebecca cornered me by the elevators," Alina explained, stepping out of the elevator. "She wanted to analyze every word of your speech. Apparently, I've become the office's most successful strategic planner overnight." "You already were. I just made it official." Adrian gestured toward his corner office. "And shall we?" His office at night was a different world from the daytime power center she was used to. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a spectacular view of Manhattan's glittering skyline, and Adrian had dimmed the overhead lights, leaving only his desk lamp and the soft glow from the city below. "Drink?" he asked, moving toward a small bar cart in the corner. "I have wine, whiskey, or I could make coffee if you prefer." "Wine sounds perfect." She settled into one of the leather chairs facing his desk, then thought better of the formal arrangement and moved to the small seating area by the windows instead. Adrian poured 2 glasses of red wine and joined her on the couch, sitting close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "So," he said, settling back against the cushions, "how did it feel, the public recognition?" "Surreal," she admitted, accepting the wine. "I've received praise before, but never in front of the entire company. Never with that kind of intensity." "Intensity?" "The way you looked at me while you were speaking, like you were saying more than just professional appreciation." Adrian's smile was slow, slightly dangerous. "Because I was saying more. I was saying, I'm proud of you. And you look incredible tonight. And I can't wait for this party to end so I can tell you what I'm really thinking." "And what are you really thinking?" "That maintaining professional distance while you're wearing that dress has been the most challenging thing I've done all week." His grey eyes traveled over her face, lingering on her lips. "That I've wanted to kiss you since the moment you walked onto that terrace. That I'm running out of creative ways to disguise how I feel about you." The words sent heat flooding through her. "Adrian, I know. We agreed to be careful, to take this slowly." He leaned closer, close enough that she could see the slight stubble along his jaw, smell the wine on his breath. "But Alina, I'm finding it difficult to remember why slow was a good idea. Because we work together. Because it's complicated. Because if this goes wrong, it could affect both our careers. And if it goes right?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility. "If it goes right," Adrian said softly, his hand coming up to cup her face. It could be everything. This time, when he kissed her, there was nothing tentative about it. This was the kiss of a man who'd spent a week thinking about nothing else, who'd watched her from across crowded rooms and counted the hours until they could be alone. His other hand found her waist, pulling her closer, and she melted into him with a sigh that spoke of her own carefully controlled desire. When they finally broke apart, both breathing unsteadily, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "We should probably talk," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "Probably," she agreed, but neither of them moved to create distance. "About what this means. About where we go from here." "Adrian," she said softly, her hand still resting against his chest, "I need you to know something." "What?" "I don't do this. I don't get involved with people I work with. I don't take risks like this. My entire life is built on careful planning and strategic thinking." "I know. But with you," she struggled to find the right words, "with you, all of that seems less important than this feeling I get when you look at me like I'm the only person in the room." Adrian's expression shifted into something that looked like wonder. "What feeling?" "Like I matter, not just professionally but personally. Like you see something in me that I didn't even know was there. Because I do see it. I see this incredible woman who's brilliant and strong and beautiful, who commands respect wherever she goes, but doesn't seem to realize how extraordinary she is. You make me want to be brave," she whispered. "You are brave. You're the bravest person I know. Then why am I so terrified right now?" Adrian's thumb brushed across her cheek. "Because this matters. Because we both know this isn't just attraction or convenience. This is something that could change everything." "Is that what you want? To change everything? For you?" "Yes." The answer came without hesitation. "Alina, I've spent 5 years building this company, focusing on nothing but success and growth and strategic expansion. And then you walked into that coffee room last Friday and said, 'I'd never noticed someone like you.' And I realized I'd been missing the most important thing, which is a reason to build something worth having, a reason to want more than just professional success." He paused, his grey eyes holding hers. "You make me want to be the kind of man who deserves someone like you." The words hit her with unexpected force. "Adrian, I'm falling in love with you," he said quietly. "I know it's fast, I know it's complicated, but I need you to know that this isn't just some office romance for me. This is me realizing that everything I thought I wanted was just a placeholder until I found you." Alina felt her breath catch. That's a lot. Too much?" "No. Terrifying, but not too much." She took a shaky breath. "Because I'm falling in love with you too, and I have no idea how to handle that." Adrian's smile was radiant. "We figure it out together. One step at a time. What about work? What about the complications? We'll handle them, carefully, professionally, but we'll handle them." He pulled back slightly to look at her. "Alina, I don't want to hide this forever. I don't want to pretend you're just another employee when you're the most important person in my life." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that maybe we should consider being honest. Not right away, not until we've figured out the details, but eventually. With HR, with the senior partners, with anyone who needs to know. You'd risk the company gossip, the potential complications. For you? For us? Yes." His voice was firm, certain. "I'd rather deal with complications than lose this." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of their admissions settling between them. Outside the windows, Manhattan glittered like a circuit board of dreams and ambitions, but inside Adrian's office, their world had narrowed to just the two of them. "So what happens now?" Alina asked finally. "Now we finish our wine. We talk about practical things like how to handle Monday morning and when we can see each other again without raising suspicions. And then I take you home like the gentleman I'm trying very hard to be, even though what I really want is to keep you here all night, talking about everything and nothing." Alina smiled. "Rain check on the all-night talking?" "Definitely a rain check." Adrian's smile was warm, full of promise. "But for now, tell me about your week. The real version, not the professional summary. I want to know what made you laugh, what frustrated you, what you thought about when you weren't thinking about strategic planning." "Are you sure it might be boring?" "Alina," Adrian said, settling back against the couch with his wine, "there is nothing about you that could ever be boring." So she told him. About Rebecca's latest dating disaster, about the book she was reading, about her Sunday phone call with her parents, and he listened with the same focused attention he brought to million-dollar deals, as if her random thoughts and daily experiences were the most fascinating things he'd ever heard. Because sometimes love begins with someone who listens like your words matter, Sometimes, the biggest challenges come from the places you least expect. 3 weeks had passed since the rooftop party, and Alina had grown surprisingly comfortable with their secret. She and Adrian had developed an intricate dance of professional distance during the day and stolen moments whenever possible. Early morning coffee meetings that ran longer than necessary, late evening project discussions in his office, weekend texts that had nothing to do with work and everything to do with missing each other. Monday morning arrived with the crisp promise of October in New York, and Alina was reviewing quarterly reports when her assistant knocked on her office door. "Mrs. Scholes, there's someone here to see you. She says it's personal." Alina looked up, confused. She wasn't expecting anyone, and personal visits at the office were unusual. Did she give a name? Lydia Stokes. She said she's Mr. Stokes' sister. The name hit Alina like a physical blow. Adrian had mentioned his sister exactly once in passing, describing her as complicated and leaving it at that. The fact that she was here, now, without warning, sent alarm bells ringing in Alina's mind. "Send her in," Alina said, standing and smoothing her blazer. The woman who entered her office was immediately recognizable as Adrian's sister. The same grey eyes, the same angular bone structure, but where Adrian carried himself with quiet confidence, Lydia moved with the sharp precision of someone accustomed to getting what she wanted. She was impeccably dressed in a designer suit that probably cost more than Alina's monthly rent, and her expression was coolly appraising. "Ms. Scholes," Lydia said without preamble, "thank you for seeing me. I'm Lydia Stokes. Ms. Stokes, this is unexpected. Can I offer you coffee?" "That won't be necessary. This won't take long." Lydia settled into the chair across from Alina's desk, her posture perfect, her gaze direct. "I'm here to discuss your relationship with my brother." Alina felt her blood run cold. "I'm sorry. Please don't insult my intelligence by pretending you don't know what I'm talking about. Adrian may think he's being discreet, but there are very few secrets in our family. Ms. Stokes, I'm not sure what you think you know. I know that my brother has been different these past few weeks, distracted during family dinners, taking personal calls he's never taken before, declining social events he'd normally attend." Lydia's grey eyes, so like Adrian's but somehow colder, studied Alina carefully. "And I know that the only significant change in his routine has been increased time spent on strategic planning meetings with you." Alina forced herself to remain calm, calling on every ounce of professional composure she'd developed over the years. "Mr. Stokes and I work closely on several major projects. It's natural that we'd have frequent meetings. At 7 p.m. on a Friday, for 3 hours?" The specificity of the information was unsettling. "I'm not sure what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything, Mrs. Scholes. I'm stating facts. My brother is involved with you, and I'm here to discuss why that's a problem." "Excuse me?" Lydia leaned forward slightly, her expression remaining perfectly composed. "Adrian has worked very hard to build Morrison & Associates into what it is today. The company's reputation, its client relationships, its standing in the architectural community. All of that is built on trust and professionalism. I'm aware of that. I've been part of building that reputation. Have you? Or have you been positioning yourself to benefit from it?" The question was delivered with surgical precision. "You're an attractive, intelligent woman in a male-dominated industry. Dating the CEO is certainly one way to advance your career." The accusation hit like a slap. "That's not what this is, isn't it? You've been with the company for 3.5 years, and suddenly you're getting public recognition, premium project assignments, direct access to the CEO. One might wonder what changed." "What changed?" Alina said, her voice steady despite the anger building in her chest, "is that I've proven myself capable of handling complex strategic work. My recognition is based on results, not on anything else. Results that conveniently coincided with whatever personal arrangement you've developed with my brother. There is no arrangement, and even if there were, it would be none of your business." Lydia's smile was sharp, predatory. "My brother's well-being is very much my business, as is the reputation of the family company." "Family company?" "The Stokes family has significant investments in Morrison & Associates, Ms. Scholes. Adrian may run the day-to-day operations, but major decisions still require family approval, including decisions about personnel who might pose risks." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Alina felt her heart racing, but she kept her voice level. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "I'm asking you to be realistic about this situation. You're a smart woman. You understand that office relationships, particularly between executives and subordinates, create complications, liability issues, HR concerns, potential claims of favoritism or harassment. There's no harassment. Not yet. But relationships end, Mrs. Scholes. And when they do, the subordinate employee often feels she has claims against the company. Wrongful termination, hostile work environment, emotional distress. It can get very expensive, very publicly embarrassing. Alina stared at Adrian's sister, understanding beginning to dawn. You've done this before. I've protected my family's interests before, yes. How many other women have you intimidated on Adrian's behalf? I prefer to think of it as providing clarity about situations that might become complicated. Lydia stood, smoothing her skirt. But to answer your question, you're the first one who mattered enough to warrant a conversation. The admission was somehow both flattering and terrifying. What does that mean? It means Adrian cares about you, more than he's cared about anyone in years, which makes you potentially dangerous to his judgment, his focus, his priorities, or it makes me important to his happiness. Happiness is a luxury, Mrs. Scholes. Success is a necessity. Lydia moved toward the door, then paused. I'm not asking you to quit your job or disappear from his life. I'm asking you to consider whether your feelings for my brother are strong enough to withstand the complications that will inevitably arise. And if they are, then you'll need to be prepared for scrutiny. From the family, from the board, from anyone who might question whether your relationship is affecting business decisions. You'll need to be absolutely certain that what you feel for Adrian is worth the potential cost to both your careers. After Lydia left, Alina sat in her office, staring out at Manhattan's skyline, her mind racing. Everything the woman had said was designed to plant seeds of doubt, but underneath the manipulation there were kernels of truth that Alina couldn't ignore. Her phone buzzed with a text from Adrian. Lunch today? I have news about the Brooklyn Heights project. The message, which would have brought a smile to her face an hour ago, now felt fraught with complexity. Was he offering her the Brooklyn Heights project because of her qualifications, or because of their relationship? Would people assume it was favoritism? Would they be right? Her hands trembled slightly as she typed back, "Rain check, busy afternoon. Everything okay?" She stared at the question, knowing that the honest answer was no. Everything was not okay. But explaining would require telling him about his sister's visit, and she wasn't ready for that conversation, just buried in quarterly reports. Talk later, of course. Dinner this week, maybe. Need to check my schedule. Even through text, she could feel the confusion in his response. Alina, are you sure everything's okay? The concern in the message made her chest ache, because the truth was, she didn't know if everything was okay. She didn't know if she was strong enough to withstand the kind of scrutiny Lydia had described. She didn't know if she could trust her own motivations anymore. Just a long day. We'll talk soon. She turned off her phone and stared out at the city, wondering how something that had felt so right just that morning could suddenly feel so complicated. Because sometimes love isn't enough when the world decides you don't deserve it. The truth has a way of surfacing when you least expect it and most need it. 4 days of careful avoidance had turned Adrian into something Alina had never seen before. Frustrated, confused, and determined to get answers. She'd managed to dodge his lunch invitations, postpone their dinner plans, and respond to his texts with professional politeness that felt like ice water after weeks of warmth. Thursday evening found her still at her desk at 7:30 p.m., not because she had urgent work, but because going home meant facing the unanswered messages on her phone and the growing ache in her chest that came from missing someone while simultaneously pushing them away. She was so absorbed in her thoughts that she didn't notice Adrian standing in her doorway until he cleared his throat. "We need to talk," he said, stepping into her office and closing the door behind him. Alina looked up, her heart skipping at the sight of him. He'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, and his usually perfectly controlled hair looked like he'd been running his fingers through it. But it was his eyes that caught her attention. Those grey eyes that usually held warmth when they looked at her were now filled with something that looked like hurt. "Adrian, I'm in the middle of whatever excuse you're about to give me. Save it." His voice was firm, but not harsh. "You've been avoiding me for 4 days. You've cancelled every plan we've made, responded to my texts like I'm a stranger, and looked right through me in meetings. So we're going to talk about what happened, and we're going to do it now." The directness in his tone was so unlike their usual gentle interactions that for a moment Alina could only stare at him. "I haven't been avoiding you," she said weakly. "Alina." He moved closer to her desk, his grey eyes holding hers. Monday morning you texted me about missing me over the weekend. Monday afternoon you could barely look at me. What happened between those two moments? She opened her mouth to deflect, to offer some professional excuse, but the words died when she saw the genuine confusion and pain in his expression. This was Adrian, stripped of his CEO composure, just a man trying to understand why the woman he loved had suddenly shut him out. She started, then stopped. It's complicated, then uncomplicated. Because I'm going crazy trying to figure out what I did wrong. You didn't do anything wrong, she said quickly. This isn't about you. Then what is it about? Alina stared at him, torn between the desire to tell him everything and the fear that Lydia's words might be true. Adrian, can I ask you something? Anything. The Brooklyn Heights project, the one you mentioned Monday. Why were you going to offer it to me? Adrian blinked, clearly not expecting the question. Because you're the best strategic planner we have. Because the project requires exactly the kind of innovative thinking you bring to complex developments. Why? Not because we're involved? No. His answer was immediate, firm. Alina, I would never compromise your professional integrity or mine by making business decisions based on personal feelings. You know that. Do I? The question came out more desperately than she intended. How can I know that? How can anyone know that? Adrian stared at her for a long moment, and she saw understanding begin to dawn in his grey eyes. Someone said something to you. It wasn't a question. Who was it? His voice had gone quiet, dangerous. David, one of the other partners. Adrian. Because if someone in this company made you feel like your work wasn't valued on its own merit, I need to know about it immediately. It wasn't someone from the company. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Then who? He moved around her desk, crouching beside her chair so they were at eye level. Alina, who made you doubt yourself? Who made you doubt us? Looking into his eyes, seeing the concern and anger there, not at her but for her, Alina felt her carefully constructed walls begin to crumble. Your sister, she whispered. Adrian went completely still. Lydia. She came to see me Monday morning. She knew about us, Adrian. She knew about our meetings, our dinners, everything. What did she say? His voice was carefully controlled, but she could see the storm building behind his eyes. That I was using you to advance my career. That I was a liability to the company's reputation. That relationships like ours always end badly, with lawsuits and public embarrassment. The words came out in a rush. She said the family has investments in the company, that they could make things difficult for both of us. Adrian closed his eyes, his jaw tightening. God damn it. Adrian. No. He stood abruptly, beginning to pace her small office. No, this is exactly the kind of manipulative bullshit I should have expected from her. She wasn't wrong about everything, Alina said quietly. There are real risks to this. Real complications. Adrian stopped pacing and looked at her. Are you seriously considering believing anything Lydia told you? I'm considering the possibility that some of it might be true. That maybe I haven't been as objective about my own motivations as I thought. Alina. He moved back to her, taking her hands in his. Look at me. She did, and the intensity in his grey eyes took her breath away. You are the most ethical, hard-working, brilliant person I know. You earned every recognition, every opportunity, every success you've had here. Long before we were anything more than CEO and employee, you were exceptional at your job. But how can I be sure? How can anyone be sure that our relationship isn't affecting your judgment? Because, Adrian said, his thumbs brushing across her knuckles, I fell for you precisely because of who you are professionally. Your intelligence, your integrity, your ability to see solutions where others see problems. I didn't fall for you despite your career. I fell for you because of it. The words hit her like a physical force, but she pushed back against the relief they offered. What about the complications Lydia mentioned? The potential for lawsuits, for HR issues? We'll handle them together. Professionally, appropriately, but together. His voice was firm. Alina, I'm not going to let my sister's fear of scandal destroy the best thing that's ever happened to me. Fear of scandal? Adrian sighed, releasing her hands and running his fingers through his hair. Lydia has spent her entire life terrified that someone will embarrass the family name. She's convinced that any relationship I have will somehow reflect poorly on the Stokes' reputation. Has she done this before? Intimidated other women? Not exactly. But she's certainly made her opinions known about anyone I've dated. The difference is, I've never cared enough about someone to fight her on it. He looked at Alina with an expression that was both tender and determined, until now. "Adrian, I love you," he said simply. "It's not just how you make me feel, not just your brilliant mind or your beautiful smile. I love who you are, what you stand for, the way you approach everything in your life with such thoughtfulness and integrity. And I'll be damned if I'm going to let anyone, including my sister, make you doubt that." Alina felt tears prick her eyes. She made it sound so calculated, like I was some kind of opportunist. "You're the furthest thing from an opportunist. You're the woman who stayed late to help junior architects with their presentations, who created the mentorship program for new hires, who turned down 3 job offers from competitors because you believed in what we were building here. You knew about the job offers. HR tells me about retention issues with key personnel. The fact that you stayed had nothing to do with me and everything to do with your commitment to excellence." He cupped her face gently. "Alina, you don't need me to succeed. You were succeeding long before we happened, and you'll continue succeeding regardless of what happens between us. But what if she's right about the complications? What if this does create problems for you, for the company? Then we'll handle them, like the intelligent, capable adults we are." His grey eyes held hers. "But I won't let fear of potential problems destroy something real and beautiful and right." Alina searched his face, seeing nothing but sincerity and determination. "What about your family? If Lydia disapproves this strongly, my family doesn't get to choose who I love, and they certainly don't get to intimidate the woman I love into doubting herself." His voice carried a steel she'd never heard before. "I'll be having a very direct conversation with Lydia about boundaries and respect. I don't want to cause problems between you and your family. You're not causing anything. Lydia's behavior is causing problems. There's a difference." They stood in her office, the Manhattan skyline glittering beyond her windows, and Alina felt the weight of 4 days of doubt and fear beginning to lift. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "for shutting you out, for doubting us. You have nothing to apologize for. Lydia is very good at finding people's insecurities and exploiting them. But Alina—" He stepped closer, his hands finding her waist. "Promise me something." "What?" "Promise me that if anyone ever makes you doubt your worth or your motivations again, you'll come to me immediately. We face these things together, not alone. I promise." She looked up at him, seeing the warmth back in his grey eyes. "Adrian, yes, I love you too. Even when I was doubting everything else, I never doubted that." His smile was radiant, transforming his entire face. "Good. Because I was beginning to worry that I'd have to stage some dramatic romantic gesture to win you back." "What kind of dramatic romantic gesture?" "I was thinking about having 'Alina Scholes is brilliant and I'm crazy about her' spelled out in lights on the side of the building." Despite everything, Alina laughed. "That would certainly make our relationship public." "Would that be so terrible?" She considered the question seriously. "You know what? Maybe it's time to stop hiding. Maybe it's time to show Lydia and anyone else who's watching that we're not afraid of what we have." Adrian's smile was slow, devastating. "Are you suggesting we go public with this?" "I'm suggesting we stop letting other people's fears dictate our choices." She reached up to straighten his tie, a gesture that was both intimate and decisive. "Starting with dinner tomorrow night, Le Bernardin, somewhere visible, elegant, somewhere we might be seen by people who matter. Ms. Scholes," Adrian said, his voice warm with affection and admiration, "I do love the way your mind works, because sometimes the biggest risks are the ones that lead you home. Some stories end where they began, but with everything changed." 18 months later, the Morrison and Associates coffee room looked exactly the same as it had that Friday afternoon when everything changed. Sleek granite countertops, professional-grade espresso machines, floor-to-ceiling windows offering stunning views of Manhattan's architectural landscape. But the woman standing by the coffee machine, wearing an elegant navy dress and a radiant smile, was transformed in ways that had nothing to do with her recent promotion to Senior Director of Strategic Planning. Alina Stokes. She still felt a thrill every time she thought her new name, was preparing 2 cups of coffee when Rebecca Torres appeared at her elbow with the same eager energy she'd always brought to office gossip. "Okay, I have to ask," Rebecca said, accepting one of the coffee cups. "How does it feel to be back in the scene of the crime?" "What crime?" Alina laughed, though she knew exactly what Rebecca meant. "The crime of making half the office fall in love with your love story. Do you realize people still talk about the day you two went public, the great revelation of Adrian and Alina?" Alina's smile widened at the memory. Their decision to have dinner at Le Bernardin, the same restaurant where they'd had their first date, but this time choosing to be visible, elegant, undeniably romantic, had indeed made waves through the company. Not scandal, as Lydia had predicted, but genuine excitement from colleagues who'd been rooting for them without even realizing it. "It wasn't that dramatic," Alina protested. "Are you kidding?" Sarah Bolt literally squealed when she saw the photos in New York Business Journal, and James Wright won $50 betting that you two would be engaged within a year. James bet on our engagement? Half the office had a pool going, though to be fair, most people thought Adrian was too much of a workaholic to propose that quickly. Alina glanced down at the elegant diamond ring on her left hand, a custom design that Adrian had commissioned from a local artist, incorporating geometric elements that reflected both their love of architecture and their shared appreciation for clean, purposeful design. "He surprised everyone," she said softly, "including you, especially me." The memory of Adrian's proposal still made her heart flutter. He'd chosen the Whitney Museum in the same gallery where they'd shared their first kiss, during a private viewing he'd arranged for contemporary sculpture. Simple, intimate, perfectly them. "And how does it feel to be Mrs. CEO?" Rebecca asked with a grin. "Like being Mrs. Adrian," Alina corrected. "The CEO part is just his day job." It was true. Despite all the complications Lydia had predicted, their relationship had been surprisingly uncomplicated once they'd stopped hiding it. The HR department had handled the disclosure professionally. Adrian had recused himself from any decisions directly affecting Alina's career, and the board of directors had been more interested in the firm's continued success than in office romance. Even Lydia had eventually come around, grudgingly but genuinely, especially after seeing how happy Adrian was and how Alina's presence had actually improved his leadership rather than distracting from it. "Speaking of Adrian," Rebecca said, glancing toward the coffee room entrance, "isn't that him heading this way?" Alina turned to see her husband walking toward them, and even after 18 months together, the sight of him still made her pulse quicken. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly, and when his grey eyes found hers across the room, his entire expression softened into the smile he reserved just for her. "Ladies," he said as he approached, but his attention was clearly focused on his wife. "Rebecca, I hope you don't mind if I steal Alina for a few minutes." "Business or pleasure?" Rebecca asked with knowing look. "A little of both," Adrian replied, his eyes never leaving Alina's face. "We have some exciting news to share." "Oh my God," Rebecca's eyes widened. "Are you pregnant?" "Not yet," Alina laughed, "but we do have an announcement." Adrian moved to stand beside his wife, his hand finding the small of her back in a gesture that had become second nature. "We wanted to tell the team personally before it becomes official. Alina has been offered a position as Regional Director of Strategic Development for the entire East Coast Division." "That's amazing," Rebecca squealed, immediately pulling Alina into a hug. "Wait, does that mean you're leaving Morrison & Associates?" "Actually," Adrian said, his pride evident in his voice, "it means Morrison & Associates is expanding. We're opening new offices in Boston and Washington, D.C., and Alina will be overseeing strategic planning for all 3 locations." "So you'll be working together even more?" "Different floors, different roles. But yes," Alina confirmed. "Turns out we're pretty good at the whole professional partnership thing too." As Rebecca peppered them with questions about the expansion and Alina's new role, other colleagues began to drift toward the coffee room, drawn by the excitement in Rebecca's voice. Soon they were surrounded by the same group of friends who'd witnessed their journey from the beginning. Sarah, James, David Kellerman, and several others who'd become invested in their story. "So," James said after the congratulations had died down, "any advice for those of us still looking for our own office romance?" Adrian and Alina exchanged a look, one of those wordless communications that had developed between them over months of partnership in both love and work. "Don't look for office romance," Alina said finally. "Look for someone who challenges you to be better at everything you do. The location where you meet is just coincidence. And don't listen to people who tell you it's too complicated," Adrian added, his hand tightening slightly on Alina's back. "The best things in life usually are complicated. That doesn't make them less worth fighting for." As the group continued chatting about the expansion, office dynamics, and weekend plans, Alina found herself looking around the coffee room with new eyes. This was where it had all started, with a casual comment about Adrian never noticing someone like her. She'd been so wrong about that, but in the most wonderful way possible. Later, after the informal celebration had died down and they'd returned to their respective offices to handle the practical details of the announcement, Adrian appeared in Alina's doorway with 2 cups of coffee and that expression that meant he had something important to say. "Penny, for your thoughts?" he said, settling into the chair across from her desk. "Just thinking about how much has changed since that day in the coffee room," she said, accepting the coffee. "Did you ever imagine we'd end up here? Here meaning married, expanding the company, and planning to take over the East Coast architectural scene together? Here meaning happy," she corrected softly. Adrian's expression grew serious, tender. "You know what I imagined? I imagined spending my whole life wondering what it would be like to have someone who understood both the business side and the creative side of what I do, someone who could challenge my thinking and support my dreams at the same time. And now? Now I don't have to imagine anymore." He reached across her desk to take her hand, his thumb tracing over her wedding ring. "Now I get to wake up every morning next to someone who makes me want to build not just a successful company, but a beautiful life." Alina felt tears prick her eyes. Even after all this time, Adrian still had the ability to say exactly what she needed to hear. "I love you," she said simply. "I love you too. Ready to take on the East Coast? With you? I'm ready to take on anything." As the New York sun set behind Manhattan's skyline, painting their office in shades of gold and promise, Alina and Adrian began planning their next chapter, professionally and personally, together. Because sometimes the most beautiful structures are built not just with blueprints and strategic planning, but with trust, love, and the courage to believe that the best foundations are built between 2 hearts that choose each other every single day. The end. What did this story teach you about love, ambition, and finding someone who sees your true worth? Your participation means a lot to the channel. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.